My name is Isabella, and for 3 years, everyone told me I was crazy. At 28, I had survived a traumatic car accident that left me with gaps in my memory, or so my family claimed. But when my sister's 2-year-old son looked at me during Sunday dinner and called me mommy, the entire room went silent. My parents' faces drained of color. My sister dropped her wine glass, and nobody, not a single person, corrected him. That little boy kept reaching for me, crying mommy over and over, while my family scrambled to explain it away. What I discovered next shattered everything I believed about my accident, my memory loss, and why my body remembered things my mind couldn't, like the C-section scar I never knew I had, and the ghost sensation of a baby I was told never existed. If you are watching this video right now, I would love to know where you are from. Drop it in the comment section below. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about family relationships that take unexpected turns. The Morrison family Sunday dinners were a tradition that survived everything: grandparents' deaths, job losses, even my accident 3 years ago. That's what I was thinking about as I pulled into my parents' driveway that warm September evening, not knowing I was about to have my entire world torn apart by a single word from a 2-year-old's mouth. Isabella, you're late. My mother called from the doorway, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the porch light. She always managed to make observations sound like accusations. Traffic, I said, kissing her cheek. The familiar smell of her lavender perfume mixed with pot roast made me feel 12 again. Claire here yet? In the living room with Oliver. Mom's face did something strange when she said my nephew's name, a flicker of something I couldn't place. He's been asking about you. That should have been my first warning. I found my younger sister Claire on the carpet, building blocks with her son. Oliver had just turned 2 last month, and every time I saw him, he seemed to have grown another inch. His dark hair fell into his eyes that were startlingly green, just like mine. Aunt Bella's here, Claire announced, but her voice was pitched too high, too bright. Oliver looked up from his blocks, and his whole face transformed. He scrambled to his feet with that clumsy toddler determination and ran straight at me. But what happened next made the entire room tilt. He reached up his chubby arms, his face glowing with pure joy, and said clearly, "Mommy back." The wine glass in Claire's hand hit the carpet with a soft thud, Merlot spreading like blood across Mom's precious Persian rug. Dad's newspaper crackled as he lowered it. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked 5 times before anyone moved. "No, baby," Claire said, scooping Oliver up so fast he yelped in surprise. "That's Aunt Isabella, remember?"
Aunt Bella.
But Oliver shook his head, squirming in her arms, reaching for me with increasing desperation. "Mommy," he insisted, his voice rising. "Want mommy?" I laughed, but it came out wrong, sharp and nervous. "Wow, Claire, guess he really missed me this week." "Kids say the darndest things," Dad interjected, his voice too loud. He was already on his feet, heading for the kitchen. "How about those Cowboys, huh? Think they'll make playoffs?" Mom rushed to help Claire with the wine stain, producing club soda from nowhere like a magician. Nobody would look at me. The air in the room felt suddenly thin, like before a storm. "It's okay," I said, trying to smooth things over. "Kids get confused." "He's not confused." Claire's voice cracked. She was still holding Oliver, but he was crying now, real tears, still reaching for me. "He's just tired. It's past his bedtime." "It's 6:30, I pointed out. "Early bedtime tonight." Claire was already heading for the stairs. "I'll just put him down." "Claire, for God's sake, let Isabella hold him if he wants." Dad's sharp tone made everyone freeze. Then, softer. "Just let her hold him." Claire turned back slowly, her face pale. When she set Oliver down, he immediately ran to me, wrapping his arms around my legs. I picked him up, and he melted against me, his little body fitting against mine like he belonged there. His hand went to my hair, twirling it around his finger in a specific pattern. Index finger, 3 twists, release, repeat. How did he know I did that to my own hair when I was anxious? "See?" I said, bouncing him gently.
He's fine.
Just missed his aunt. But Oliver had settled his head on my shoulder, and I could feel him mouthing a word against my neck, over and over, so quiet only I could hear. Mommy. 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 Claire watched us from the stairs, tears streaming down her face. What's wrong? I asked her. Claire, what? It's just. She wiped her face quickly. He's never that comfortable with anyone else. Even with Mom, he takes forever to warm up. But with you, he sees me every week. We're buddies, right, Oliver? Oliver pulled back to look at my face, his green eyes, exactly like mine. I realized with a jolt, serious and searching. He touched my cheek with one small hand, like he was trying to memorize me. Mommy sad, he asked. I'm not sad, sweetie. And I'm not. We should eat, Mom announced. Food's getting cold. Dinner was agony. Oliver refused to sit in his high chair, screaming until Claire let him sit on my lap. He played with my hair throughout the meal, that same twisting pattern, and every time someone tried to take him, he clung tighter. My parents barely spoke. Claire pushed food around her plate. Has he been saying it a lot? I finally asked. The mommy thing? No, Claire said quickly. Yes, Mom said at the same time. They looked at each other, some silent conversation happening over the pot roast. Sometimes he gets confused, Mom finally said. You and Claire look so much alike. We didn't, though. Claire had Dad's sandy hair and brown eyes. I had Mom's dark hair and green eyes. Like Oliver. That night, back in my apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I stood in my bathroom, getting ready for bed, when I noticed something. A small birthmark on my shoulder, shaped like a crescent moon. I'd had it forever. Oliver had the exact same mark. I'd seen it when his shirt rode up as I carried him. I pulled out my phone to text Claire about the coincidence, but stopped. Something made me open my laptop instead, searching through old photos from before my accident. There weren't many. I'd lost a lot in the crash, including my phone and most of my memories from the year before it happened. The doctors said traumatic brain injuries were like that. Swiss cheese memories, they called it. Holes where memories should be. But then I found it. An old external hard drive buried in a box I hadn't opened since moving. It was labeled Backup 2021. The year of my accident. My hands shook as I plugged it in. Hundreds of photos I didn't remember taking. Videos I didn't remember filming. And then, a video file dated 3 months before my accident. I clicked play. The woman on screen was me, but not me. This version of Isabella was glowing, radiant. She was wearing a loose dress, but when she turned sideways, it was unmistakable. She was pregnant. Very pregnant. Week 28, the me on screen said to the camera. Hello, little one. Mommy loves you so much already. Daddy would have loved you too, if he could have met you. But I promise, I'm going to be enough for both of us. I'm going to give you everything. Footsteps in the hallway. The video cut off. I sat on my bathroom floor, laptop burning my thighs, trying to breathe. That was me. Pregnant. 3 months before my accident. But that was impossible. I'd never been pregnant. I would remember being pregnant. Wouldn't I? I didn't sleep that night. Or the next. By the time I showed up at my parents' house with my laptop, I looked like hell and felt worse. Isabella. Mom opened the door, her smile faltering when she saw my face. What's wrong? You look. I need to show you something. Dad was in his study. I set the laptop on his desk and hit play without preamble. The pregnant version of me filled the screen, talking to her belly about love and promises and a father who couldn't be there. The silence after the video ended was deafening. Well, I demanded. Were you ever going to tell me I was pregnant? That I have a child somewhere? Mom's hands were clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Dad's face had gone gray. Isabella, Mom said carefully, like she was talking to a wild animal. Sweetheart, you need to understand. Your brain injury, it caused significant trauma. The doctor said. Stop. My voice was sharp. Just tell me the truth. Was I pregnant? You were confused, Dad said firmly. Before the accident, you were under tremendous stress. James had just died. James? The name felt familiar but distant, like an echo. Your fiancé, Mom said softly. He died in Afghanistan 7 months before your accident. You didn't handle it well. And this video? You were helping Claire, Mom said quickly. Too quickly. She was pregnant with Oliver, and she was nervous about telling people. You were helping her practice announcement videos. By pretending to be pregnant myself? You were always theatrical, Dad said, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. I looked at the screen again, frozen on my face. My happy, pregnant face. I want to see my medical records. All of them. From the accident. That's not a good idea, Dad said. The doctors said dwelling on that time could trigger. I don't care what the doctors said. I want my records. The next morning, I sat in the hospital records office, signing form after form. The clerk, a nervous young woman named Amy, kept glancing at her computer screen, then at me, then back at the screen. Is there a problem? I asked. It's just several pages are restricted. Family request for psychological protection. I'm requesting them now. You need a doctor's approval to access restricted psychiatric records. Psychiatric? I was in the ICU for a head injury. Amy bit her lip. According to this, you were transferred to the Riverside Psychiatric Treatment Center after your initial recovery. For 4 months. For months. They told me I was in a coma for 3 weeks. I called Claire from the parking lot. I need to talk to you. Alone. No mom and dad. Isabella, I don't think. Claire, I found a video of me pregnant. I know something happened. Please. The silence stretched so long, I thought she'd hung up. Then, coffee shop on Maple. 1 hour. Claire was already there when I arrived, Oliver with her. She looked like she'd been crying for days. Couldn't get a sitter, she explained, but the way she held Oliver, protective and guilty, told a different story. Oliver immediately reached for me. Mommy. Oliver, no. Claire said weakly, but she let him come to me. I held him on my lap, this little boy, who knew things I didn't. Claire, please. Just tell me the truth. Was I pregnant? Claire's composure shattered. I'm so sorry, Isabella. I'm so sorry. They said it was best for everyone. You don't remember the pain, the screaming. What pain? What screaming? After the accident. When you woke up. You were looking for your baby. But they told you it was delusions from the head trauma. They said if we went along with it, you'd heal faster. My body went cold. Where's my baby, Claire? Oliver looked up at me with those green eyes, my eyes, and patted my cheek. No cry, mommy. Claire sobbed harder. Oh my God. The coffee shop spun around me. Oliver is. They said you had a psychotic break. Claire said desperately. When you woke up from the coma, you didn't remember being pregnant at first. Then the memories came back fragmented, confused. You were hysterical. You tried to hurt yourself. Mom and Dad, they thought if you didn't remember, if we just... You stole my baby? I didn't steal him. I saved him. You were catatonic, then manic, then suicidal. You couldn't care for him. Someone had to. I stood up so fast the chair fell over. Oliver clung to me, whimpering. Mommy okay? He asked. Mommy's okay, I said automatically, then felt my knees buckle as the weight of what I'd just said hit me. That night, I dug deeper. I requested police reports for my accident. The officer's notes were revealing. Single vehicle accident on Highway 1, 2:07 a.m. Driver appeared to be in active labor. Significant blood loss, suggesting complications. Transported to St. Mary's ER. Active labor. I'd been in labor when I crashed. Aunt Helen showed up at my apartment uninvited the next day. She'd driven 3 hours from Sacramento. Your mother called, she said, pushing past me. Said you were having episodes again. Episodes. Helen looked older than I remembered, worn down. That's what they called them. When you'd remember things. Episodes. You knew. She sank onto my couch. We all knew, Isabella. But your parents, they convinced us you were too fragile. That the truth would break you completely. The truth being that Oliver is my son? Helen nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. You were driving to the hospital when you crashed. James had been dead for 7 months. You were alone in labor, probably terrified. The crash, you had an emergency C-section. You held Oliver for maybe 5 minutes before you lost consciousness. I held him. You wouldn't let go. Even unconscious, they had to pry him from your arms. I touched my stomach, feeling for the first time the raised scar tissue hidden below my bikini line. Not from the accident, like they'd told me. From a C-section. There's more, Helen said. Your medical bills. The psychiatric facility. Your therapist, Dr. Martinez. They've all been working together to keep your memories suppressed. That's not possible. Dr. Martinez has been helping me recover. Has she? Or has she been making sure you don't? That afternoon, Oliver drew pictures while Claire and I sat in uncomfortable silence in my living room. She brought him over, saying he'd been asking for me all morning. Tell me about the night he was born, I said. Claire closed her eyes. You were already in surgery when we got to the hospital. The crash, you'd lost a lot of blood. They didn't know if either of you would make it. But we did. Oliver was perfect. Healthy. But you were in a coma for 3 weeks. When you woke up, you didn't remember the pregnancy at first. Then it came back in pieces. You kept asking for your baby, but you couldn't remember giving birth. The doctors said it was the trauma, physical and psychological. Oliver toddled over with his drawing. It was a crude stick figure drawing, but clear enough. A woman in a bed and a smaller figure being carried away by another woman. What's this, baby? I asked him. The sad day, he said matter-of-factly. When Mommy went sleep and Aunt Claire took me home. Claire gasped. He can't possibly remember. He was newborn, I said. But some part of him knows. That evening, I found my old phone in a box of things from the accident. It was cracked but somehow still worked when I charged it. There were dozens of missed calls from the night of the accident. And one voicemail for myself. My finger hovered over play. Claire had left. Oliver was with her. I was alone with the truth I was about to hear. I pressed play. My own voice, panicked and breathless. If something happens to me, please make sure my baby knows I loved him. I'm driving to the hospital now. The contractions are 2 minutes apart. Something's wrong. There's so much pressure. Please tell my son that his mommy loved him more than all the stars. The sound of tires squealing. A horn. A crash. Then nothing. I played the voicemail for my parents the next morning. Mom collapsed into a chair. Dad stood frozen by the window, his coffee mug suspended halfway to his lips. You knew, I said. You knew I was pregnant. You knew I was in labor. You knew Oliver was mine. And you stole him. We didn't steal him. Dad's voice was hard. We saved him. And we saved you. From what? From yourself. Dad slammed the mug down, coffee splattering across his newspaper. You were suicidal, Isabella. When you woke up and we told you James was dead, you tried to throw yourself out the window. You were on suicide watch for weeks. So, you decided to take my baby? You didn't remember him, Mom sobbed. For the first month, you didn't remember being pregnant at all. It was a blessing. A chance for you to heal without my child. You were catatonic, Dad continued. Then when memories started returning, you were manic. You insisted you'd been pregnant, but you couldn't remember giving birth. The doctors said forcing the memories could cause permanent psychological damage. So, you just gave him to Claire? Someone had to care for him, Mom said. Claire had just graduated nursing school. She was stable, prepared. She was 23. And you were hospitalized. I pulled out the custody papers I'd found at the courthouse that morning. Except I wasn't just hospitalized, was I? You had me declared mentally incompetent. You forged my signature giving Claire custody. The silence was damning. The signature isn't forged, Dad finally said. You signed it. I would never. You were on heavy medication, sedatives, antipsychotics. The doctors said it was necessary to prevent self-harm. You signed lots of things during that time. My hands shook as I looked at the paper. The signature was mine, but shaky, uncertain. Drugged. You had me sign away my son while I was sedated? We did what we thought was best. You stole my child and gaslit me into believing I was crazy. The front door opened. Claire walked in with Oliver, who immediately ran to me. Mommy. He climbed into my lap, playing with my hair in that familiar way. Stop calling her that, Dad snapped. Oliver's face crumpled. He looked between me and Claire, confused and frightened. It's okay, baby. I soothed him, glaring at my father. Don't yell at him for telling the truth. Isabella, please, Claire begged. This is confusing him. I'm his mother, Claire. That's not confusing. That's fact. That afternoon, Dr. Martinez sat across from me in her office, the same office where I'd spent 3 years talking about my delusions and false memories.
You knew, I said.
This whole time, you knew Oliver was my son. Dr. Martinez, usually so composed, looked haggard. Your parents had medical power of attorney. You were considered mentally incompetent. I was obligated to follow the treatment plan they approved. Treatment plan? You mean suppressing my memories of my own child? You were severely traumatized. The combination of losing James, the accident, the traumatic birth, your mind fractured. When you first remembered being pregnant, you became hysterical. You tried to harm yourself multiple times. Because everyone was telling me I was crazy. You once broke a window and tried to cut your wrists, screaming that you needed to be with your baby. You meant suicide, Isabella. You wanted to die to be with him. I stared at her. Or, I meant I needed to be with my living baby, who everyone was keeping from me. Dr. Martinez pulled out a file thick with papers. These are my session notes from your time at Riverside. Would you like to read them? I took the file with trembling hands. Page after page of documentation. Patient insists she gave birth despite no evidence. Continues to experience false memories of pregnancy. Became violent when told the baby was not real. But then different notes. Hidden among the clinical observations. Patient certainty about pregnancy remains unshaken. Physical examination shows signs consistent with recent childbirth. Patient unaware of C-section scar. Recommend further evaluation of claims. You started to doubt, I said. After 6 months, yes. Your story never changed. Usually with true delusions, details shift. Yours didn't. You knew your due date, the baby's movements, every detail of your pregnancy. But by then, Oliver was already Claire's. Your family said you were stabilizing. That reopening the issue would destroy the progress you'd made. I found a session recording dated 2 years ago. Dr. Martinez handed me headphones. My own voice filled my ears, desperate and pleading. I know I had a baby. I can feel it in my bones. My body remembers even if my mind doesn't. Why won't anyone believe me? Please, I'm not crazy. I'm not making this up. My baby needs me. He needs his mother. Dr. Martinez's recorded voice responded, These feelings are valid, Isabella, but they're based on trauma, not reality. Let's increase your medication. I ripped off the headphones. You knew I was telling the truth and you drugged me anyway? I suspected. But your parents, they had guardianship. They threatened to move you to a different facility if I didn't comply. At least with me, I could monitor you, protect you from worse treatments. Worse than being gaslit about my own child. She had no answer for that. That evening, I sat in Oliver's room, Claire's guest room where he slept during visits. Claire stood in the doorway, watching me read him a bedtime story. He loves that book, she said softly. Good night, Moon. He makes me read it every night. I bought it, I said suddenly, the memory surfacing like a bubble. When I was pregnant, I bought it because James loved it as a child. Claire's breath hitched. You remember? Pieces. Fragments. They're coming back faster now. Oliver was nearly asleep, but he held my hand tightly, like he was afraid I'd disappear. I really believed them at first, Claire said. That you were delusional. You were so broken when you woke up and when you didn't remember Oliver. Mom said it was a sign. That God was giving us all a second chance. A second chance? You could heal without the burden of single motherhood. I could have the baby I'd always wanted but couldn't have. Oliver could have a stable home. You can't have children? Claire shook her head. Endometriosis. Found out senior year of college. Mom said Oliver was meant to be mine. He was meant to be mine, Claire. He is mine. I know, she whispered. I've always known. The way he looks at you, he's never looked at me that way. Even as a newborn, he'd cry, and nothing I did helped. Mom said it was colic, but I knew. He was crying for you. That night, alone in my apartment, the memories came flooding back. Not all at once, but in waves, each one threatening to drown me. James's face when I told him I was pregnant. His hand on my belly. The flag-draped coffin. The positive pregnancy test 2 weeks after his funeral. The determination to have our baby, to keep this piece of him alive. The morning sickness. The first flutter of movement. The ultrasounds. Painting the nursery in my apartment. Where was that crib now? The baby shower my mother had insisted on canceling after James died because it was too sad. The contractions starting while I was alone. The fear. The drive to the hospital. The deer in the road. That's what caused the crash. I swerved to miss a deer. The pain. The blood. Voices saying emergency C-section and fetal distress. Then Oliver's cry, that perfect, beautiful cry that meant he was alive. My baby, I'd whispered, reaching for him. Please, my baby. They'd placed him on my chest for just a moment. He was perfect, covered in blood and vernix, but perfect. His eyes, my eyes, had opened and looked right at me. Mommy's here, I'd told him. Mommy loves you. Then darkness. And when I woke up, everyone told me he'd never existed. I was standing in my bathroom, staring at my C-section scar, when my phone rang. Unknown number. Isabella Morrison? Yes. This is Pamela Hendricks. I was the nurse on duty the night you gave birth. My heart stopped. How did you? Your Aunt Helen tracked me down. I retired last year, moved to Florida. Distance makes it easier to speak the truth. Tell me everything. You were brought in from the accident in active labor. The baby was in distress, so we did an emergency C-section. You hemorrhaged badly. We nearly lost you. But Oliver? Perfect. Healthy. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. You held him for maybe 5 minutes before you lost consciousness. When you woke up 3 weeks later, you had no memory of the pregnancy at first. Then what happened? Your parents happened. They convinced the doctors that acknowledging the baby would cause a complete psychotic break. They said you'd attempted suicide when you learned about James. They had you transferred to Riverside before you could fully recover. And Oliver? Your sister took him home the day he was discharged. Your parents had gotten emergency custody. They told everyone you'd had a mental breakdown and abandoned him. I would never. I know. I saw you with him in those 5 minutes. I've seen a lot of mothers with their babies, Isabella. I've never seen anyone hold on like you did. Even unconscious, you wouldn't let go. We had to sedate you further to get him away. I threw my phone across the room and screamed until my throat was raw. The next morning, I stood in my childhood bedroom at my parents' house. They'd kept it exactly the same, teenage posters, stuffed animals, trophies from high school track. But now I noticed what wasn't there. No photos from the year before my accident. No pictures of James. No evidence of my pregnancy. They'd erased it all. Isabella? Mom stood in the doorway. What are you doing here? Looking for proof that you stole my life. We didn't. Stop. Just stop lying. I turned to face her. I remember everything. The pregnancy. The birth. The 5 minutes I got to hold my son before you took him away. Mom's face crumpled, but I felt no sympathy. Do you have any idea what it's like to know something in your bones, but have everyone you trust tell you you're insane? To doubt your own mind? To be medicated into compliance while your baby grows up calling someone else mommy? You thought you could play God. You thought you knew better. You thought a grieving pregnant woman didn't deserve her child. You tried to kill yourself. When? When exactly did I try to kill myself? Mom's mouth opened and closed. Before the accident? No, I was preparing for my baby. After? I was drugged and gaslit. The only time I was suicidal was when you made me believe I was crazy. Isabella, please. I want him back. You can't just. He's my son. The words ripped from my throat. Oliver is my son, and I want him back. The sound of small footsteps made us both turn. Oliver stood in the hallway, Claire behind him, both of them having arrived for lunch. Mommy? Oliver's voice was small, uncertain. He looked between me and Claire. Two mommies? I knelt down to his level. Hey, baby. He walked to me slowly, like he was testing if it was safe. When he reached me, he put his small hands on my cheeks. Mommy was lost, he asked. Yeah, baby. Mommy was lost for a while. But I'm here now. He nodded solemnly, like this made perfect sense to his 2-year-old mind. Then he wrapped his arms around my neck and whispered, Found you. Behind him, Claire was sobbing. Mom had sunk to the floor. And somewhere in the house, I could hear Dad on the phone, probably with their lawyer. But none of that mattered. Oliver was in my arms, right where he belonged. My memories were returning. The truth was surfacing. And I was going to get my son back, no matter what it took. Because now I remembered the most important thing. That moment, right after he was born, when he opened his eyes and looked at me. He knew who I was then. And some part of him had never forgotten. I spent 3 days in bed after the memories returned. Not sleeping, not exactly awake either. Just existing in the space between who I'd been and who I really was. Isabella Morrison, mother of Oliver. It sounded foreign and true at the same time. The memories came in waves. Some gentle, James's laugh, his hand on my pregnant belly, the flutter of first movement. Others crashed over me with violent force. The contractions, the crash, Oliver's first cry, the feeling of him being pulled from my arms. On the 4th day, I got up. I showered, dressed, and drove to Dr. Martinez's office with a box of recorded sessions. I want you to listen to something, I said, placing my phone on her desk. It was a recording from 2 years ago, one she'd given me thinking it proved my delusion. But now, with clear eyes, I heard it differently. My voice, desperate but lucid. I know I had a baby. I can feel it. When I walk past the nursery section at Target, my body responds. My breasts ache like they're remembering. I smell phantom baby powder. These aren't delusions, Dr. Martinez. These are body memories. Why won't you believe me? Her recorded response. Your mind is creating false sensations to match false memories. Let's increase your risperidone. I stopped the recording. You knew. Some part of you knew I was telling the truth. Dr. Martinez looked older than I'd ever seen her, the weight of 3 years of lies etched in the lines around her eyes. Your parents had guardianship, she said quietly. They showed me documents. Medical power of attorney. Court orders. If I'd challenged them, you were supposed to be my advocate. I thought I was protecting you from worse. There are doctors who would have recommended electroshock for persistent delusions. Lobotomies are illegal, but there are chemical equivalents. Your parents were considering all options. The word lobotomy made my blood run cold. They would have destroyed my mind to keep their secret? They convinced themselves they were saving you. Your father especially. He couldn't bear seeing his daughter in pain, so he decided to erase the source of it. My son wasn't the source of my pain. Losing him was. Dr. Martinez pulled out a thick folder. These are my real notes. The ones I kept at home. Every doubt, every inconsistency, every piece of evidence that you were telling the truth. I've been waiting 3 years to give these to you. I opened the folder. Page after page of observations. Patient's physical responses consistent with postpartum separation. Scar tissue indicates recent C-section. Patient describes accurate pregnancy symptoms without access to outside information. Family exhibits signs of deception during joint sessions. Why didn't you do anything? I tried.
Once.
I suggested we slowly reintroduce the idea that your pregnancy was real. Your father threatened to have me removed from your case and sued for malpractice. He said I was feeding your delusions. He had connections, golf buddies on the medical board, friends in the state psychiatric review committee. I would have lost my license. So, you chose your career over my sanity? I chose to stay where I could minimize the damage. Another doctor might have increased your medications until you were catatonic. At least with me, you had a chance of recovering. I stood to leave, then turned back. I'm going to get Oliver back. And when I do, I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you did. What you all did.
I know, she said.
I've already started drafting my confession for the medical board. That afternoon, I hired Marcus Chen, a family lawyer who specialized in custody cases involving medical malfeasance. His office was sparse, efficient, all sharp angles and clean lines. This is one of the most egregious cases of medical fraud I've seen, he said after reviewing my documents. But it's complicated. Your sister has been Oliver's legal mother for 2 years. Courts prioritize stability for the child. He's my son. Biology isn't everything in custody cases. Claire has been his primary caregiver. She hasn't abused or neglected him. Removing him from her care could be seen as traumatic. More traumatic than stealing him from his actual mother? Marcus leaned back. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying it's complicated. We need to build an airtight case. The criminal charges against your parents for fraud, forgery, and false imprisonment. Testimony from medical professionals about the conspiracy. Evidence that you're mentally and financially stable enough to care for Oliver. How long will that take? Months. Maybe a year. He's 2. He's already missed 2 years of knowing I'm his mother. Which is why we're also filing for immediate supervised visitation. You'll see him, Isabella. But we need to be strategic. That evening, Claire appeared at my door with Oliver. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and Oliver was clinging to his stuffed elephant. Can we come in? I stepped aside. Oliver immediately ran to me, wrapping his arms around my legs. Mommy, up. I lifted him, and he settled against me with a contented sigh. Claire watched us, with an expression I couldn't read. I've been thinking, she said, about that night, when they brought him to me at the hospital. Claire? No, you need to hear this. He wouldn't stop crying. For hours, he screamed. The nurses tried everything. Formula, different positions, white noise. Nothing worked. Then one nurse, an older woman, she said something I'll never forget.
What?
She said, that baby's crying for his mama. And you ain't her. Oliver was playing with my hair again, that specific twisting pattern. I knew she was right, Claire continued. Even then, I knew. But Mom said you were too sick. That Oliver needed someone stable. That I was saving him. You were 23, Claire. They manipulated you too. Don't. Her voice was sharp. Don't absolve me. I was old enough to know better. I wanted a baby so badly, and there he was, perfect and beautiful and needing a mother. I let myself believe their lies because it gave me what I wanted. So what now? Now I tell the truth. All of it. To whoever needs to hear it. That could destroy you. Mom and Dad will. Let them. I've been destroyed since the day I took him home. Do you know what it's like to have a child call you mommy when you know you're not? To see him search for something you can't give him? To watch him light up when his real mother walks in the room in a way he never does for you. Oliver had fallen asleep against my shoulder, drooling slightly on my shirt. Claire reached out to touch his hair, then pulled back. I love him, she said. But he's not mine. He never was. The next morning, the local news picked up the story. Someone at the hospital had leaked it, probably Amy from records, bless her, and suddenly my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Family hides woman's baby after accident-induced amnesia was the headline on Channel 7. Mom called 15 times. Dad left a voicemail threatening legal action. But the story was out, and it spread like wildfire. Marcus called an hour later. This changes things. Public pressure can influence custody decisions. But your parents are claiming you're having another psychotic break. They're painting this as a delusion. Of course they are. Which is why we need Dr. Martinez's testimony immediately. And Claire's. Can you get them to the office today? By noon, we were all in Marcus's conference room. Me, Claire, Dr. Martinez, and surprisingly, Aunt Helen, who'd driven down again. I've been keeping records too, Helen said, pulling out a notebook. Every family gathering where something seemed off. Every time Oliver called Isabella mommy, and everyone pretended not to hear. Every lie your parents told to cover their tracks. Marcus reviewed everything with the efficiency of someone who'd seen too many family tragedies. This is enough for criminal charges. The question is whether you want to pursue them. They're my parents, I said, then thought of Oliver's face.
But yes.
They need to face consequences. That afternoon, Claire did something I didn't expect. She took Oliver to my apartment and left him there. I can't, she started, then stopped. He had another nightmare last night.
He was calling for you.
Not me.
You.
He's always calling for you. Oliver was playing with blocks on my living room floor, humming to himself. Claire, you can't just. I know legally he's still mine. I know this could hurt my case if your parents challenge me. But Isabella, he needs to be with you. He's needed it since the day he was born. She kissed Oliver's head, whispered, I love you, and left. Oliver looked up at me with those green eyes.
And Claire said,
Yeah, baby. She's sad. You sad?
No, suetie.
I'm not sad anymore. That night, for the first time in his life, Oliver slept in his mother's home. I watched him breathe, memorizing every detail. The way his hair stuck up in the back. The little sounds he made in his sleep. The way he clutched his elephant. At 2 a.m., he woke crying. Mommy, I'm here, baby. Mommy's here. He crawled into my lap, pressing his ear against my chest. Heart, he said sleepily. Mommy's heart. And I remembered with stunning clarity the moment after he was born when they'd placed him on my chest. He'd turned his head, pressing his ear against my heart, and stopped crying immediately. He remembered. Somehow, someway, he remembered. The next morning, I woke to pounding on my door, and Oliver still curled against me, his small hand clutching my pajama shirt. Isabella Morrison. This is the police. We have a court order. My blood turned to ice. I grabbed Oliver, who whimpered at being woken, and called Marcus from my bedroom. Don't open the door yet, he said. I'm on my way. They can't break it down unless they believe there's immediate danger. They're here for Oliver? Your parents filed an emergency custody motion. They're claiming you kidnapped him from Claire. She brought him to me. I know. I have Claire's signed statement. But until a judge reviews it, they have a court order. Isabella, you have to open the door. The next 20 minutes were the longest of my life. Marcus arrived just as the officers were threatening to break down the door. Oliver clung to me, crying as the officers explained they had to return him to his legal guardian, my parents, who had somehow gotten emergency custody from Claire. This is temporary, Marcus whispered as they took Oliver from my arms. We have a hearing tomorrow. Oliver screamed the entire way down the hallway. Mommy. Want mommy. Please. I collapsed in the doorway, unable to breathe. The hearing was at 9 a.m. The courtroom was packed. Journalists had caught wind of the story, and public interest was growing. My parents sat on one side with their lawyer, a shark named Richardson who'd handled divorces for half the country club. Claire sat behind me, having been subpoenaed by both sides. Judge Patricia Reeves, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes, reviewed the case file with obvious displeasure. This is one of the most troubling cases I've seen in 30 years, she began. We have allegations of medical fraud, forgery, false imprisonment, and systematic psychological abuse. We also have a 2-year-old child who needs stability. Mr. Richardson, your clients are seeking to maintain custody of Oliver Morrison. Richardson stood. Your Honor, my clients have been Oliver's stable presence since birth. Ms. Morrison has a documented history of mental illness, including psychosis and suicide attempts. Just yesterday, she took the child without legal authority. I gave him to her, Claire interrupted, standing. I drove Oliver to Isabella's apartment because he's her son and he belongs with her. Ms. Morrison, you'll have your chance to speak, the judge said, though not unkindly. Continue, Mr. Richardson. The child knows my clients as his grandparents and Claire Morrison as his mother. Removing him would be traumatic. More traumatic than stealing him from his biological mother? Marcus interjected. The judge raised her hand. I'll hear from the witnesses now. Dr. Martinez, please take the stand. Dr. Martinez's testimony was devastating for my parents. She detailed the suppression therapy, the forged consent forms, the medication administered without proper authorization. She presented her private notes, 3 years of doubt and growing certainty that I'd been telling the truth. In your professional opinion, Marcus asked, was Ms. Isabella Morrison delusional about her pregnancy?
No.
She was traumatized, confused, and systematically gaslit, but she was never delusional. Her memories were real. Next came Nurse Pamela via video link from Florida. She described my labor, the emergency C-section, how I'd held Oliver for 5 minutes before losing consciousness. The patient was coherent during those 5 minutes, she testified. She knew her baby. She named him Oliver, after her late fiancé's father. She was a mother recognizing her child, not a delusional patient. Then it was Claire's turn. She looked small on the stand, her voice barely above a whisper at first. Tell us about the night Oliver was brought to you, Marcus said gently. I was at the hospital with my parents. Isabella was in a coma. They told me she'd rejected the baby, that she didn't want him because he reminded her of James. They said if I didn't take him, he'd go into foster care. Did you believe them? At first. But then Isabella woke up, and she kept asking for her baby. Mom and Dad said it was the head injury, that she was confused. They had doctors confirm it. Papers. Everything seemed legitimate. When did you start to doubt? Claire's eyes found mine. The first time Oliver saw Isabella after she was released from Riverside. He was 6 months old. The moment he saw her, he stopped crying and reached for her. He'd been colicky, difficult, never settling for anyone. But with her he was peaceful. He knew her. What did your parents say? That babies don't remember. That it was coincidence.
But it kept happening.
Every time Isabella visited, Oliver would light up. He'd cry when she left. And when he started talking, Claire wiped her eyes. His first word wasn't Dada or Mama. It was Mommy, and he was looking at Isabella when he said it. My father's face was granite. My mother was sobbing quietly. Ms. Morrison, the judge asked Claire directly, do you believe Oliver should be with Isabella? Yes, Claire said without hesitation. He's her son. He's always been her son. I was just borrowing him. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for the time I stole from them. The courtroom was silent except for my mother's crying. Then came my turn to testify. Marcus walked me through the recovered memories, the evidence, the psychological torture of being told my real experiences were delusions. Ms. Morrison, Richardson cross-examined, you admit you have gaps in your memory? Yes. You admit you were hospitalized for mental health issues? I was hospitalized because my family told doctors I was delusional. But you were suicidal, were you not? I took a breath. I was grieving. My fiancé had died. I was pregnant and alone. After the accident, when they told me my baby wasn't real, yes, I wanted to die. Because they made me believe I'd lost my mind along with everything else. So, you admit to being unstable. Objection, Marcus said. Counsel is badgering. Sustained. Judge Reeves looked at me directly. Ms. Morrison, if I grant you custody, are you prepared to care for Oliver? I've been preparing for 3 years, Your Honor. Even when I didn't remember him, some part of me was waiting. I have a stable job, a safe home, and most importantly, I'm his mother. I'll do whatever it takes to give him the life he deserves. And your parents? They're his grandparents. Would you allow them contact? I looked at my parents. Dad's controlled facade had finally cracked, and Mom looked broken. They need to face consequences for what they did, I said. But Oliver shouldn't lose his entire family because of their choices. Supervised visits, maybe. Eventually, after they've gotten help. The judge nodded and called a recess. During the break, my mother approached me in the hallway. Isabella, don't.
Please.
Just let me say this. She looked older than I'd ever seen her. We thought we were protecting you. When you woke up from the coma, you were so broken. When you didn't remember Oliver at first, it seemed like a mercy. You could heal without. Without my child?
That's not healing, Mom.
That's amputation. I know that now. But then, your father was so certain. He said we were saving you from a life of single motherhood and grief. He said Oliver deserved better. Oliver deserved his mother. Yes, she whispered.
He did.
He does. Dad appeared beside her. Isabella, be reasonable. You have no experience with children. Claire has been raising him. Because you stole him from me. We did what we thought was best. No, you did what was easiest. It was easier to pretend I was crazy than to help me heal. It was easier to give my son to Claire than to support me as a single mother. You took the easy path and called it love. When we returned to the courtroom, Oliver was there with a social worker. The moment he saw me, he started reaching and crying. Mommy, Mommy. Judge Reeves watched this interaction carefully. I've made my decision, she said. This case represents a severe miscarriage of justice. Isabella Morrison was systematically denied her parental rights through fraud and medical malfeasance. However, we must consider Oliver's well-being above all else. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear. Therefore, I'm granting immediate temporary custody to Isabella Morrison with a full review in 6 months. Claire Morrison will have visitation rights, as discussed with Isabella. Mr. and Mrs. Morrison Sr. are prohibited from unsupervised contact with the child pending criminal investigation. The gavel came down. Oliver was placed in my arms. Mommy, he said, patting my wet cheeks.
No creí.
Oliver here. Yeah, baby, I whispered. You're here. 6 months later, I sat in the same courtroom for the final custody hearing. But everything was different now. Oliver was thriving. The constant nightmares had stopped after the first month. His vocabulary had exploded, and he chattered constantly about everything from butterflies to breakfast. He still saw Claire every week. Aunt Claire days, he called them, and they'd found a new rhythm that worked for both of them. The criminal case against my parents had concluded 2 months earlier. They'd pled guilty to fraud and false imprisonment, receiving suspended sentences with mandatory psychiatric counseling and 200 hours of community service at a mental health advocacy center. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Their medical licenses weren't revoked. Dad had retired voluntarily, and Mom had never practiced. But their reputation in our community was destroyed. They'd sold their house and moved to a smaller place across town. Dr. Martinez had lost her license for 6 months and was required to complete additional ethics training. She now worked exclusively with trauma survivors, trying to atone for her role in my story. Ms. Morrison, Judge Reeves said, reviewing the reports. The court-appointed psychologist says Oliver has adjusted remarkably well. The guardian ad litem reports a strong, healthy bond between you and your son. Ms. Claire Morrison has submitted a letter supporting permanent custody. Is there anything you'd like to add? I stood. Just that Oliver knows who he is now. He knows his story, the age-appropriate version. He knows he has a mommy who lost him and found him again, an aunt who took care of him, and grandparents who made mistakes. He knows his daddy is in heaven but loved him very much. He's not confused or traumatized. He's just Oliver. Happy, healthy, loved. Mr. and Mrs. Morrison Sr., do you wish to contest? My parents' lawyer stood. No, Your Honor. My clients support Isabella's custody and hope to rebuild their relationship with both their daughter and grandson in time. Judge Reeves smiled, the first time I'd seen her do so. Then it gives me great pleasure to grant full, permanent custody of Oliver James Morrison to his biological mother, Isabella Morrison. This case is closed. But life, of course, continued. 3 weeks after the final hearing, I was giving Oliver a bath when he asked, Mommy, why you go away? I'd been preparing for this question with his therapist. Mommy had a big ouch on her head, baby. It made me forget things, even you. But I always loved you, even when I couldn't remember. Aunt Claire was my mommy? She took care of you when I couldn't. She loved you very much. He processed this with the simple acceptance only a 3-year-old could manage. Okay, more bubbles. But the conversations weren't always that easy. A month later, we ran into my parents at the grocery store. It had been bound to happen in our small town. Oliver was sitting in the cart, singing a song about dinosaurs. When he saw them, Grandma, Grandpa. My parents froze. We hadn't had contact since the hearing. "Hello, Oliver," Mom said softly. She looked at me. "Isabella." "Mom." Oliver looked between us, sensing the tension.
Grandma.
"A little," Mom admitted.
Why?
My parents looked at me, asking permission. I nodded slightly. "Because Grandma made a mistake," Mom said carefully. "A big mistake. And mistakes can make people sad." "Say sorry," Oliver suggested, because in his world, apologies fixed everything. "I am sorry," Mom said, tears running down her face. "I'm so sorry." Dad cleared his throat. "We both are." Oliver considered this. "Mommy, they sorry." "I know, baby." "Okay now." If only it were that simple. "We're working on it." We started with supervised visits at a neutral location, a family counseling center that specialized in reconciliation after trauma. Oliver would play while my parents and I worked through 3 years of lies with a therapist. "I dream about it," Mom admitted during one session. "The moment they took Oliver from your arms. You were unconscious, but you wouldn't let go. They had to pry him away. I told myself you didn't know, that you couldn't feel it. But mothers always know, don't they?" "Yes," I said. "We do." Dad struggled more. His whole identity had been built on being the protector, the one who made hard decisions for his family's good. "I convinced myself you were broken," he said. "That acknowledging Oliver would break you more. I was so afraid of losing you to suicide that I ended up losing you anyway."
You didn't lose me, Dad.
"You threw me away." It took months, but slowly, painfully, we built something new. Not what we'd had. That was gone forever. But something different. Honest if fragile. Claire and I found our own rhythm too. She came for dinner every Wednesday, and Oliver would show her his drawings and tell her about preschool. She was dating someone now, a kind man named David, who understood her complicated history. "Do you hate me?" she asked one evening while Oliver napped. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But mostly I'm grateful you kept him safe. You loved him when I couldn't. That matters." "I'll never forgive myself." "Then that's your burden to carry. Not mine." James's parents became part of our lives too. They'd always suspected something was wrong, but had been told I'd had a breakdown after James died and couldn't handle contact. When they learned the truth, they'd been furious, threatening their own lawsuit before I calmed them down. Now they visited monthly, sharing stories of James with Oliver, showing him pictures, keeping his memory alive. "He looks just like James at that age," his mother said, watching Oliver play. "But he has your spirit, Isabella. Your determination." The hardest conversation came on a random Tuesday evening. Oliver and I were reading before bed when he asked, "Mommy, where my daddy?" I'd prepared for this too, but it still took my breath away. "Your daddy was a soldier, baby. He went to help people far away, but he got hurt and died before you were born." "He not coming back?"
No, es waitie.
"But he loved you so much. He loved you before he even met you."
Oliver thought about this.
"Like you loved me when you forgot me?" The insight of children never ceased to amaze me. "Exactly like that." "Okay," he said, then pointed to the book. "Read more?" But that night, after he was asleep, I sat in his room and talked to James. "He's perfect," I whispered to the darkness. "You would love him so much. He has your smile and your stubborn streak. He's obsessed with planes like you were. Sometimes he makes this face when he's concentrating, and it's exactly you." The window was open, and a breeze moved the curtains. I chose to believe it was James answering. The anniversary of the accident came and went. 3 years since I'd lost Oliver. 1 year since I'd found him again. We marked it quietly, just the two of us at the beach, building sandcastles. "Mommy, look," Oliver shouted, pointing at a seagull. "Bird." Such simple joy. Such easy happiness. He didn't carry the weight of what had happened. That was my burden, not his. Dr. Martinez had been right about one thing. Recovery wasn't linear. Some days I woke up angry, furious at the time stolen from us. Other days, the grief hit like a physical pain. I'd see a mother with a newborn and mourn those first 2 years I'd missed. But Oliver grounded me in the present. Every mommy watch, And love you to the moon reminded me that we'd found our way back to each other. The legal settlement from the hospital and the psychiatric facility was substantial. I put most in trust for Oliver's education, but I also used some to move us to a new house, one without memories of the time before. Oliver helped pick it out, mainly because it had a big backyard and a tree perfect for climbing. "Our house, Mommy?" he asked the first night there. "Our house, baby." He ran through the empty rooms, his laughter echoing off the walls. This was our fresh start. Claire helped us move in. She and David carried boxes while Oliver supervised from his wagon. My parents came by later, after asking permission, bringing a handmade toy chest Dad had built in his workshop. "It's beautiful," I said, running my hand over the smooth wood. "I needed something to do with my hands," he said quietly. During the after everything, building things helped. Inside the chest, he'd carved Oliver James Morrison and the date, not his birth date, but the date of the final custody hearing. The day he officially became mine again. We were in the backyard, Oliver playing on his new swing set, when Mom said, "I'll never forgive myself for the time we stole from you." "I know, but you're a wonderful mother, Isabella. Despite everything, or maybe because of it. The way you fought for him. Any mother would have." "No," she said firmly. "Not any mother. You never gave up, even when your own mind betrayed you. That's not ordinary. That's extraordinary." Oliver ran over, grabbing my legs. "Mommy, push me on swing?" "Sure, baby." As I pushed him, his laughter filling the air, I realized something. We'd never get back the time we lost. Those first words, first steps, first years were gone. But we had this. Afternoons in the backyard, bedtime stories, whispered love yous, and a lifetime ahead. "Higher, Mommy," Oliver shouted. "Higher it is." The last entry in this story comes from yesterday. Oliver started kindergarten. He wore his dinosaur backpack and held my hand until the very last second. "You be okay, Mommy?" he asked, worried about leaving me. "I'll be okay, baby. You have fun." He hugged me tight, then ran to join his class. At the door, he turned and waved. "Bye, Mommy. Love you." "Love you too." His teacher, Mrs. Patterson, smiled at me. "First day is always hard." "Not the hardest," I said. That evening, Oliver chattered nonstop about his day. The books, the blocks, his new friend Marcus, the class fish named Bubbles. Normal kindergarten things. Beautiful, ordinary, perfect things. At bedtime, as I tucked him in, he said, "Mommy, Marcus asked why I have two mommies." I said I don't. "I have a mommy and an Aunt Claire." "That right?" "That's exactly right." "Good." He yawned. Story? I picked up our worn copy of Goodnight Moon, the same one I'd bought while pregnant, hidden away for 3 years, now beloved and familiar. In the great green room, Oliver mouthed the words along with me. This story he'd heard 100 times. When we finished, he was nearly asleep. "Mommy," he said drowsily. "Yeah, baby? You never go away again?" "Never." "Promise." "I promise." He nodded, satisfied, and closed his eyes. "Love you, Mommy." "Love you too, Oliver. To the moon and back." "And back again," he mumbled, already drifting off. I sat there for a long time, watching him sleep. My son. Found, kept, cherished. The family that tried to protect us by tearing us apart had learned the hardest lesson, that love isn't control and protection isn't deception. We were healing, all of us, in our own ways and time. The scars would always be there, hidden but present, like the C-section scar that marked Oliver's entrance into the world and our separation. But scars are proof of survival. Proof that what tried to break us didn't succeed. Oliver stirred in his sleep, reaching out. I gave him my hand, and he settled, peaceful. We'd found our way back to each other. Mother and son. Complete. The story could end here, with this moment of peace. But real stories don't end. They continue, one day at a time, one memory at a time, building something new from the ruins of what was lost. Tomorrow, Oliver will wake up and ask for pancakes. He'll play with his dinosaurs and resist brushing his teeth. He'll go to school and come home with art projects and tales of playground adventures. Normal things. Beautiful things. And I'll be there for all of it. Not because a court said so, not because biology demands it, but because he's my son, and I'm his mother, and some truths are stronger than any lie, no matter how elaborate. Some bonds can't be broken, only hidden. And what's hidden can always be found again. If the people you trusted most could convince you that your own memories were lies, would you have the strength to trust yourself again? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about the unbreakable bonds that survive even the darkest betrayals.